All right, welcome to episode 19 of the HYPEothetically Speaking podcast, where we put the hype in every hypothetical scenario. I'm joined by a man who probably loves that pun, that play on words, none other than Rotoworld's own Zak Hanshew. We just started a 30-team Dynasty league with just other fantasy basketball analysts, and we're going to dive into that. But first, Zak, how are you doing?
I'm great, man. And I do love the podcast name. So yeah, definitely appreciate you having me on, brother.
Yeah, dude, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to finally get to talk about basketball because I think I told you this. My friends just aren't as into basketball. They like to talk football, and I even have to talk baseball or attempt to talk baseball, more facilitate conversation for baseball. If you listen back, I know nothing. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But now we get to talk basketball, fantasy basketball. Before we get into talking about the league, Zak, I just wanted to kind of ask, I know you've been doing this for a few years now, but how did you kind of get into the fantasy space and get into fantasy basketball?
Yeah, man. So I guess about 5 years ago, I've been in a league with buddies from high school and college for, I think this is our 11th season now. And so about 5 years ago, a couple of us from the league got together and started just doing like a weekly podcast for our league, some shit talking, some recaps, that kind of stuff. I started just doing some writing just for fun. I applied at Fantasy Pros to jump on with them January of 2018, got rejected, started my own website, which was very, very, very rudimentary, very just like a free WordPress type of site. But I wrote a bunch of articles on there, reapplied again over the summer and got hired with them doing fantasy football. I was doing an article a week for them that eventually grew into fantasy basketball. I think I started covering with them with the Kristaps Porzingis trade. So I guess that would have been like 2019. Shortly before that too, I had applied at RotoWire and was doing NBA blurbs for them as well, just on the back end there. And then I've just been covering fantasy sports since summer of 2018. And I left Fantasy Pros last year. I was doing a lot of fantasy football coverage for them, and I decided I like fantasy basketball a lot more, and decided to apply at NBC, got hired with them, and I've been here for almost a year now, and best decision I ever made, man. I love it.
Yeah, no, one of my questions was going to be, I didn't know you started with fantasy football, was going to be what made you choose fantasy basketball? Why do you like that more? Because I know I personally am just more of a basketball guy than a football guy, but I know it's a lot more of a grind for fantasy basketball because you're setting lineups basically every day. What about that was more appealing to you?
I think what's more appealing to me for fantasy basketball is just the star-driven nature of the sport. I mean, so you got in football, obviously you have your guys like Tom Brady, Aaron Donald, guys that can, change the outcome of a game, but essentially it's a team sport more than anything else. Basketball in general is you got one guy on the court that can take over, score 50 points and will your team to the championship. I mean, LeBron drug the 2007 Cavaliers to the championship with God only knows who was on that roster. So that's kind of what I really like about it. And there's just a certain type of swagger to the NBA. There's a certain type of just star quality that I think is really, it's just very attractive. It's very fun. And we get to, I'm sure you know this too, is we get to kind of put some of that juice into our blurbs and, kind of make it fun and exciting at NBC and into our writing, with articles, with podcasts. So that's what I really enjoy about it most.
Yeah, no, it's been nothing but a blast for me. And you mentioned the stars. You don't have to worry about some, like, I think it was last week, Sean McVay was just kind of like, I know I didn't play Cam Akers the first 2 weeks, but I think I'll do it this time and just not use Darrell Henderson. So you're not worried about running back committees, and not too many coaches, I guess, screwing you over. I guess Tom Thibodeau does that to everybody, but
right.
I like that. I like that. But let's get into this 30-team Dynasty League, which as soon as you asked, I was like, yes, no, I do Dynasty sports more than just 1 year leagues. Like I'm a huge Dynasty guy. I joined Jonas's 30 team league. I took over a team, did a little dispersal draft for that, but I was excited to do just a full 30 team draft. So, but I guess just general, I don't know how many dynasty leagues you play in. I play in far too many dynasty football leagues, but I don't know, like what's kind of your general strategy heading into a dynasty draft?
It's tough, man. I think you kind of have to approach it differently I mean, just depending on who you're playing with. Obviously, in this draft that we're playing in, it's with 30 different analysts. So this is a lot of sharp minds, a lot of guys that really they know what's going on in the NBA. They know who to take. They're aware of, current trends, who's being selected where, what kind of value you can get. So I think that's definitely something that I keep in mind is who I'm drafting with. Obviously, you can kind of identify some of the tendencies of some of these guys if you read their work, if you listen to them on podcasts. I think it's something that everybody in the group chat for this league has been joking about, like, oh, Jonas Nader's going to take Triple J, and Zach's a fanboy for Tyrese Halliburton, and Dr. A is huge on Oklahoma City Thunder players, which he took 2 in the first 2 rounds. So I think that's something you can keep in mind. It's the same thing when you play with friends and family. You know who's the wild card. You know who's going to draft conservatively. So I think that's always something I keep in mind is just taking what the draft gives me and kind of playing, knowing your audience essentially.
Yeah, it's definitely been really fun. I think one of my favorite things is just waiting for Jared to react to certain picks. I think as soon as Jordan Poole went off the board, I think you said something about it in the group chat, but I knew, I was like, oh man, I know Jared was targeting Jordan Poole. And a classic Jared Johnson all caps text was exactly what we all needed. But I was really kind of curious to see who was going to go in and just kind of say, okay, I'm going to win now. Obviously, the first few picks you can do both, and then who was going to go in and tank. I was kind of hoping, you mentioned Doc got Chet Holmgren and Josh Giddey in the first 2 rounds. I was kind of curious, where was Chet going to go? Because I didn't know if people were going to say, 30 teams, I kind of want to at least be competitive a little bit. Let me not get him in the first round. I was kind of hoping he'd make it back around to me. And then I was going to try and get Chet and Wemby. But now Doc's going to get Chet and Wemby. He's going to have a full Thunder lineup there. Some of the interesting rules, I think, for this league specifically, the 3rd round reversal. I've never done a league with a 3rd round reversal, but I see how necessary it is for this league. But then I think is it pronounced Stepien rule? I've never actually heard it said out loud. I've just read it, but it's basically that you can't trade 1st round picks consecutive years. How'd you guys come up with that?
So that's essentially, again, everything is just in place to keep things fair. So you mentioned the 3rd round reversal, and Matt has kind of talked about that a little bit at length about, if you have the 1st overall pick, you're going to get Jokic, Doncic, Giannis, whatever, pick your poison there. And if you're not doing the 3rd round reversal, by the time it comes back to you, even in a 30 team league, you're getting picks 60 and 61. And so then all of a sudden you have 3 top 61 players and your team is absolutely stacked. And in a league like this, the difference between pick 1 and pick 30 is pretty significant. So the 3rd round reversal is designed to keep things fair, even the playing field. And same thing with the Stepien, however you say it, rule where you can't, you can't forfeit 1st round picks in consecutive years. So that way, even if your team is terrible, you don't want to be that team that's terrible. You've traded your 1st round pick and then, there is no reset button. Everything is designed to keep the league moving forward at a consistent pace, fair, level playing field. Everybody's having fun. And we don't need to get to the point where it's out of control. Is running the league and 15 guys are just nowhere near contention. So everything's designed for that purpose.
Yeah. And I think I'm a guy in dynasty leagues that's very pro tank, but I'm also a guy that's if you're going to tank, just set a healthy lineup, set your best lineup,
sure,
trade away your assets and get picks. But I think this kind of helps prevent, like you said, someone from just trading away 4 firsts for Luka. And then one team is way too stacked. One team is going to be stacked within 2 seasons. I was just kind of curious. I don't know if this was even mentioned in those rules. do we go to the extent of, oh, we can trade protected picks? Can we do pick swaps? Is that, I don't know if that was even mentioned, because I've wanted to do pick swaps and protected firsts in leagues for years. I just always forget to do it when I'm actually making trades. Is that something we could see in this league? Could we see, teams trading top 10 protected firsts? Is that a possibility?
I'm not sure about the protected picks. That's something I would have to look into.
Yeah.
I do know you can trade future draft picks, and you can trade those up to 4 years in the future. So you definitely don't have to just be looking at next year. You can be looking well down the road. And part of that too is to make it kind of like you're actually managing an NBA team, right? So I mean, you can trade next year's first round pick and then 3 years in the future first round pick. And then that way you're still keeping within the Stepien rule, but you're also trading 2 first round picks, and you're also making a deal that benefits your team and hopefully benefits the other guy's team.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we won't see Doc go full thunder and trade away everybody for first round picks. I think that was something he said the last time I did a podcast with NBC. It was me, him, and Matt Straub. And he said that he just joined a Dynasty league, but he hates it when people trade away first at midseason, and then it just kind of makes the league imbalanced. It's like, okay, I could see that. And then he went and did the thunder strategy. So I don't know what Doc's doing, but we'll have to see. And then, so let's get into some of the picks. I might actually share my screen so that we can kind of look at this while we're talking. Okay. So I guess it's too big of a draft board for us to really look at every pick, but when you saw in that lottery that you had pick, was it 24? Who was on your mind? I know you ended up getting Darius Garland. Who was on your mind that was a possibility?
Yeah, so that's something that we kind of talked about in the lottery show, or maybe it was after the lottery show. I can't remember, but I was talking with Rhett Bauer, and he said, yeah, at that point you can, likely kind of stack your team with win now veterans. And there were some of those guys on the board. But I don't know, my mind in a dynasty league doesn't go to the win now veterans. I think it is a lot of fun to win. And obviously you can't predict things in the future. You can say Darius Garland or Chet Holmgren or, Paolo Banchero is going to be amazing for years to come, but freak injury or team situation, everything can change in a minute. But again, to me, it's just not as fun drafting those guys because those are the guys you target in redraft leagues. So I was looking for the best young player that I could get at that point. And to me, Garland falling to 24 felt like a present dropped in my lap. Really, I thought he would have been gone by that point.
Yeah, Garland, I don't know. I don't want to say anybody was necessarily a reach or a steal, because it's like if you really like a guy and you're not picking for, the first few rounds, it's like you're picking 60 picks later or 50 picks later. Yeah. It's like you got to get your guy. But I love the Garland pick, and I love Alperen Şengün. I really love that entire draft class. But what was your thoughts? Because I don't remember if anybody said it was like a reach, but I know some people were like, whoa, like, what were your thoughts going through for that one?
Yeah, I think a couple guys in the chat said, yeah, it was definitely unexpected. Again, it kind of goes back to, I'm not going to draft again for, with its third round reversal. So I'm not drafting again for 30 more picks at this point. So grab my guy. At that point, we're at pick 37. So by that point, we're going to be at pick 67. Take the guy that I want. I was really naively, I thought Keegan Murray would come back around to me, or else I would have just grabbed him right there. But Ryan Nouse traded up like 10 picks later and snagged him. And I reached out to him privately and, threatened to quit and use some expletives and some other stuff. But, anyway, it's a different story. But no, Şengün is a guy that, again, based on age, based on opportunity, they traded Christian Wood, the Rockets did, to give him more minutes, open up playing time for him. And he displayed all the kind of things that we've loved to see from Nikola Jokic. He can pass, he can score, he can rebound, and his steal rate, I think, was up there among the leaders and rookies from last year. He's really great on defense. So just a lot of things to love about him. And again, just 20 years old. So in a dynasty league, I felt like I couldn't pass him up right there.
Yeah, no, for sure. As you were talking, I realized I was sharing my entire queue with anybody who's watching. So hopefully that doesn't entice uh, Jared to go on here, just look at my queue and then take who's ever at the top. But I was looking at, you can kind of see how teams are forming at this point. I guess, some teams are stacking youth. Like, I don't know everybody's name, but this team with Scotty Barnes and Franz Wagner, like, I love that team. I love both of those players. I didn't really expect Scotty Barnes to get back around to me. I was kind of hoping Franz Wagner would. But man, that's a team that if I could have said like, hey, I'm going to go into this draft, I'm going to come out with those two in the first 2 rounds, I would have been very happy. I'm a huge Scotty Barnes guy. But then some of them, I don't know. I guess when you're going into it, were you looking? I know we talked about like you were wanting to draft younger guys. Were you looking for any specific categories to necessarily punt or go for, or were you kind of deciding that after maybe your first pick of getting Garland?
No, to be honest with you, man, in a league like this with 30 guys, obviously the punting strategy is something to keep in the back of your mind. But for a dynasty league like this, my strategy is best available player. I can always trade later. I can always, adjust my drafting strategies next year. But for me, it's just getting the best available player. So if that means getting Garland and Sengun and just being kind of average at a bunch of different categories rather than excelling at 4 or 5, that's fine for me for right now.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's look at some of like the first picks in the draft. Was there any doubt in your mind about Luka going number one? Was there any, like, if you had the number one pick, it would be Luka, right?
I would debate between Luka and Jokic, but I would probably go Luka. I probably would. The first two, I think, are in whatever order are set, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think I was kind of hoping I wouldn't have the first pick as the lottery was going down. I saw I was getting to be top 10. I was like, oh my gosh, like I hope I'm not, because I wanted to be around 30, just to kind of get the third round reversal, that benefit of it. But now my team is going to be affected by the third round reversal, but that's okay because getting Evan Mobley in the top 10, I was thrilled. Like I said, I'm just huge on everybody in that entire class, probably because in my home league, we started it, it's probably year 4, I want to say. And I think so I ended up, I tanked for a couple seasons, but I had a bunch of firsts in that class and got like everybody. So I have Cade, Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Franz Wagner, Alperen Sengun. If I could show you, the league is just insanely, it's just weird because like one guy has like Embiid, KD, Harden, Luka, and then there's another team that has, I mean, me and another team have like 20 or 25 guys who would probably go in the top 100 of Dynasty League drafts each. And then, yeah, there's a couple other teams. So it's just a weird home league, as you may expect. Okay, let's see. Was there any picks so far, I guess, that maybe surprised you a little bit, or some picks that you were like, wow, I really like that pick at that value?
The first one that jumped out to me, and I threw it out in the group chat too, was Alex Reclean taking Steph Curry at, I think it was 15 or 16. Mm-hmm. That one stuck out to me. I mean, granted, I know he's elite. I know he's easily top 10 guy for probably the next 3 or 4 seasons, but I don't know, man. With so many guys, I mean, taking one pick before Zion, Bam, Spida, Scotty Barnes, there's just so many other guys on the board that I would have rather had. But again, that's me being, wanting to have fun, wanting to get young guys. And I know Reclean, I've been in other drafts with him. I've read his stuff. Very smart guy, very practical guy. So I think for him, and he outlined that too, is that, hey, this guy, I'm going to sacrifice the decade or so of production for elite value right off the top for the next 3 or 4 seasons. So again, that just kind of shows you the difference in people's strategies, because I never would have taken Curry there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely more of a young guy, tank guy, if I may say so myself. Getting good draft picks that first year is one of the most fun things to me. But when I was heading into this, I think I told you this before, maybe I already mentioned it, but I was really hoping like Cade Cunningham was my guy. I was like, okay, I have
Yeah.
ninth pick. I want Cade Cunningham. And then he went right before me, which really hurt badly because I was like, Cade Cunningham, need him. Got Evan Mobley, happy with that. Obviously, this league has been kind of, I guess, publicized on Twitter, which of course allows for people to share their opinions on some of our picks so far.
Right.
So I just kind of wanted to go through a few. We'll start with mine that I think we talked about before. But there's a few questions, I guess, within the past hour about some picks. Because I saw Steph was actually one that was questioned on Twitter. Somebody said that Robert Williams was a reach for me. So I know I talked to you about this before, but I just want to also talk about it on the podcast. I went and looked at Handy Old Basketball Monster because that's what I do. I just want to go see how they did last season. And Robert Williams for Basketball Monster is the number 16 player in the league in 9-cat. And I was like, okay, cool. He turns 25 next month. And he just finished as basically early to mid second round value. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, like that's a guy that I was, because he wasn't even on in my queue. I had to scroll down to find him because of the knee injury. And the knee injury is a fair question, in my opinion. I think, what was it? Upgraded like 8 to 12 weeks that he's going to miss at this point. But
Right.
I don't know. In Dynasty, to me, with Mobley, it's two young shot blocking guys. And I think I may have seen Jared say it on Twitter, where it's like, because of his injury, there's just not a ton of like shot blocking centers in the NBA this season. So if I can go ahead and get two of them, that's basically a category for me. Plus, they're both good rebounders, decent at steals for big men too. I don't know. I was pretty happy with that one. I don't know. What were your thoughts at Robert Williams going pick 52?
I love that pick, dude. I think that's great. I think he's being, and for good reason. I mean, he's being
Right.
undervalued at this point because of the knee injury, but at the same time, I mean, almost a top 15 guy, not even 25 years old yet. You can deal with the injuries and take a guy like that with your 52nd pick.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. And as you mentioned, man, the categorical scarcity with blocks. I mean, that's one of the toughest categories to find. And especially later in drafts, you're not going to get high volume blocks. So you're going to win that category just based on these two players in a league of this size, I think. So you've already built the foundation there. And Robert Williams, too, for what it's worth, pretty good free throw shooter for a big man as well. So you're not really getting dinged in that category either. So I love that pick, man.
Well, I appreciate it. Maybe I just needed a little bit of affirmation after my pick was questioned on Twitter, as one does. But one of the other ones that was recently, actually, I think it was the same guy, Devin Vassell at pick 57. Now, okay, so I think when the pick before was on the clock, Mitch Casey was like, hey, like if anybody wants to trade for this pick, let me know. So I messaged him. I was like, hey, man, like, what do you think it would kind of take? He said like similar deal to the trade that Ryan made that ended up getting Keegan Murray. Sorry to bring it up. I know it's still a sore subject, but I was like, I was considering getting it. He wanted a little bit more. I was like, okay, cool. But the guy I had on my mind was Desmond Bane. And I was kind of also considering Devin Vassell, but I didn't want to give up a ton to get it. I'm a huge Vassell fan. Zach, I played in the same region as him in high school. So I played against him a handful of times. So I was like, I remember like when he got the offer from Peachtree, not that he would know who I am. Let me rephrase, Zach. I was on a team that played against his team. I sat on the bench while he was on the court. So I played against him, but just like, if Devin Vassell would have no clue who I am, but I played against him a handful of times. And I remember when he got offered at Peachtree Ridge, from Peachtree Ridge High School, offered to Florida State. And then like hearing like, hey, like he might go in the lottery. Like I remember like, whoa, like it was kind of shocking. And then when I started like listening to NBC podcasts, I was like, wait, they love Devin Vassell and like at Rotoworld. So it was just kind of crazy to me how that worked out. So I was fully ready to reach for him or Desmond Bane, maybe not a reach with my pick. But then I was like, okay, Robert Williams is probably too good of a value to pass up at this point. But I personally love the pick. I know he's basically good for a steal and a block, and he hits threes, relatively efficient, good mid-range pull-up. And with the Spurs trading away DeJounte Murray, kind of like a tank season. But I don't know if you saw Pop's press conference. He basically said, don't go bet on us to win the NBA finals, which like was supposed to be like a funny thing, but also he's like, this is a season to focus on development and developing these players. So I think Devin Vassell is going to get a ton of opportunity this season, along with a number of other Spurs players, just to kind of develop, just go experience being on the court as much as possible. I want to know your thoughts on getting him at 57.
I think that's another great pick, man. I wasn't super high on Vassell, even as recently as like a year ago, and I definitely ate my words. I actually remember talking with Rhett Bauer about this. I guess it was probably around this time last year, and he asked me, how come you're not very high on him? Is it because the Spurs kind of take their time with development, because you're concerned that his defense maybe won't translate over to the NBA at a high level? And those were all concerns of mine. But obviously, those things we don't need to worry about, right? I mean, so DeJounte Murray's gone. The team is essentially, for lack of a better word, tanking. I mean, you call it developmental season, but it's a tank. And they're focusing on these young guys like Vassell, who, as you mentioned, great on defense, shown some great flashes on offense. And yeah, I think that's an awesome pick at 57. I think he's going to be great for years to come. And obviously we haven't seen his best yet. So, and very cool, man, that you played against him in high school. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. It's something that I'll probably, throw out over the next 40 years, especially if he continues to do more and more and ends up being really good. I know there was a JV game that he played in his sophomore year that I played in my sophomore year that I actually was on the court and played well. Probably had like 15, but I think that point total's gone up over the past few seasons. I probably say like 35 now. Maybe it'll go up. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Looking through some of the other ones, Jabari Smith over Jalen Green is not gonna age well, is one of the tweets. Jabari Smith went 33, and then Jonas got Jalen Green at 35. I guess who would you have taken over between those two?
Oh man, Jalen Green was who I had queued up in the second round if he hadn't been taken. So I'm team Jalen over team Jabari, absolutely. Again, and who am I to question B-Dub, right? He's one of the founders of Fantasy Basketball International. The man knows his stuff inside and out. But I do strongly agree with that comment that Jalen Green is going to be the better fantasy prospect for years to come over Jabari Smith. Obviously, all we saw last year was scoring, but he was a very valuable fantasy player down the stretch. And just the flashes that he showed us. I think Jabari Smith is going to be a great player. But I think I'm probably a little biased just because of the excitement factor. I don't think Jabari Smith really excites anybody. I mean, he doesn't excite me. He's a great basketball player, but Jalen Green that's prime time, man. And so that's the guy that I would have gone for.
Yeah. I'm looking through some of the other tweets. It looks like same guy who said about Vassell and about Robert Williams also said that Alperen Sengun at 37 was ambitious, but he loves it. So you have his vote of confidence in that one. So that's good.
That's a nice way of saying you're an idiot, but well.
You may be an idiot, but it was hype. It was fun. So
yeah, there you go.
What else can you ask for? And then I guess the other one that just happened about 10 minutes ago, so I don't even know if you saw it. Somebody just responded and said Barrett ? RJ Barrett went 54. How are you feeling about RJ Barrett at 54? He is a young guy, definitely has a chance to improve. I just don't think, to me, he's been a great 9-cat guy so far. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember his name, but I think he said he was a Knicks fan or lives in New York. I don't remember, one of the two. So maybe that's just hype for him.
It might be hype for him, but he just signed that massive extension. They kept him in New York. We've seen his game improve. Obviously, I think there's some deficiencies that are going to hold him back in 9-cat. So it's not the most thrilling pick in the world, but I mean, if you're looking for youth, you're looking for upside. I mean, Barrett's got both. So probably wouldn't have gone for Barrett there, but I understand the reasoning behind it. I don't hate it.
Yeah. And as a Hawks fan, I don't think I'm going to draft any Knicks, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, right.
Just a little bit. It's weird. So my dad's from New York, so he grew up a Knicks fan. But thankfully he didn't pass that on to me. Unfortunately, he passed on being a Jets fan to me. So I don't know.
Ooh.
So like, yeah, like anybody can say whatever they want. I can't say a word. So it is what it is at this point. It's
You got Joe Flacco, man. I mean,
okay.
that's something. Flacco to Wilson with the connection we were all hoping for.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly what I envisioned. Man. So I guess who, or unless you don't want to tip your hand, it's fine. Who could you be possibly targeting with the 7th pick of the 3rd round?
Yeah, so I got how many picks before me? 3, 4, 5. I got 5 picks before me. I'm going to see how things play out here. And I think whoever goes next is probably going to, guide my pick here. But I definitely am considering taking a veteran at this point. I've got 2 young guys here. I might want to balance it out with somebody like a LeBron James or a Rudy Gobert. That wouldn't bother me at all. I think LeBron can continue playing at a high level for a couple more years. Obviously, Rudy is going to be in Minnesota for a while. So I might consider them. I also have my eye on a couple of young guys. MPJ is somebody that I'm looking at. WCJ, just KPJ. I mean, all the initial names I'm looking at right now. And actually, I see them all right there back to back in your queue too. But those are guys that I was considering as well. Oh, and I see you got yeah. So I won't talk about your queue anymore for anybody that's just listening. But
right, I was gonna say anybody who has the audio version now knows. I believe 5 of my next 6, but that's okay. They probably weren't all going to make it back around to me anyway. So it is what it is. I considered Gobert and LeBron both with my last pick if I was going to go all in. I didn't realize Gobert was only 30. So I almost did it just because it just feels like he's like 33 just because I don't know, just feels that way to me, but didn't end up doing with it. So I guess, this draft is still going to take us a long, long time, but maybe we'll get another opportunity to talk about it at some point. But I do want to hear, since this is the Hypothetically Speaking podcast, if you could give me just a bold take for the fantasy basketball season, since we'll get some fantasy basketball takes. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you're just a bold take guy in general, but I'd love to hear some bold takes from Zak Hanshew.
I don't know how bold it is anymore. I feel like there's a couple of guys that have started getting hyped up, but my biggest, the guy that I'm most hyped about this year is Tyrese Halliburton. I think he's going to finish easily as a top 10 player in 9-cat leagues, top 5 player in 8-cat leagues. So I think he's a guy that is going to go for 20 and 10. I think he's on the same trajectory as a Chris Paul. Tweeted out some numbers earlier about their per 36 stats over their first 2 seasons. And I think that he's heading in the same direction. He's a guy that doesn't have to be, his usage rate doesn't have to be 30. It can be low to mid 20s. He can be he's been very efficient. He can be that efficient scorer, high assists, high steals, decent scoring, decent rebounding, good at threes. So he to me is going to be the guy that takes the biggest leap this year. He'll be a top 5 player. The other guy that I'm sure that I'm most excited about too is Keegan Murray. So guy that I think is going to win Rookie of the Year. He's a guy that I think finishes in the top 60 fantasy players this season. I think he has a better year than Paolo, better year than Jabari Smith, better year than Jaden Ivey. He's a guy that I'm very high on just because of, that 2-way skill set that he has. If we're just talking NBA in general,
I'd love it.
I think the Pelicans come out of the West this year. I think the Pelicans are this year's version of the Memphis Grizzlies. I think they're going to put it all together. Zion's going to have a healthy year. He's going to ball out for fantasy managers who end up snagging him in the 3rd or 4th round at a discount. He'll put up numbers like we saw a couple of years ago. I think with McCollum there, with some of the depth they have and guys like Alvarado and Trey Murphy, you're going to get some great production from JV, from Herb. I think that team, Brandon Ingram, obviously, who Doc and I were talking about yesterday, looks like a vagrant with the way he's been, maintaining his hair. I think that team comes out of the West this year and turns a lot of heads.
Just to circle back, because I wanted to add in on Tyrese Halliburton, because I remember writing for the draft guide, and I was like starting to write about the Pacers. Halliburton, after the trade to Indiana, he averaged 17.5 points, 9.6 assists, 1.8 steals, 2.2 triples, shot over 50% from the floor. Dude was playing with guys he's never. The only player on the team he'd played with before was Buddy Hield. Stepped onto the court, like no training camp, maybe a couple practices, and almost averaged 10 assists. I just can't imagine like having a full training camp and full summer with these with these guys, learning how to play with them and not averaging 10 assists a game. So that just blew my mind that he may as well have been playing pickup, especially the first few games, just because the lack of familiarity. With Keegan Murray, I remember when I was doing a little bit of scouting, trying to see, how guys played heading into the draft, saying, okay, his game looks like it'll translate really well, like a guy that'll just be able to score his rookie year. Definitely a contender for rookie of the year. I think he averaged like 25 a game in his second season at Iowa. Just a guy that I think you could have just dropped into any team and would have just been fine. And I think in Sacramento, a team that's trying to push to the playoffs, I think that's a good situation for a guy to win rookie of the year. And then, man, the Pelicans coming out of the West, I think that's hype. That is a hypothetical hype take if I've ever heard one. I love it. I think that would be awesome. The one other time I think we've talked about NBA on this podcast, it was more boring takes. I think I said something like Clippers and Bucks or something. It's just more boring, but I love the Pelicans take. I think they're one of the deepest teams in the league, riddled with young talent, and I love Willie Green. I don't know if you've heard his episode on the JJ Redick's podcast, Old Man 3. Willie Green just seems like a stand-up guy, but also like a really good leader. And I think they started off, 1-12 or 0-12 last season, fought back to make the playoffs without Zion the entire time. It's just a team that's faced adversity. And I think they can just easily step in to next season with extra talent and just be ready to go. I have high expectations for them as well. I wouldn't say NBA finals, but I think that would be hype.
Absolutely, man. And if you're looking just to kind of look back on the past, I think looking back on it, I think the Pelicans won the Anthony Davis trade too. I really don't care about the bubble championship. I'm a LeBron fan. I love that he got another ring. But without that break, I think it would be foolish to admit that team would have made it to the finals. I mean, LeBron and AD making it for the whole year. They benefited greatly from that time off. So I think after the fact, you can look and see where New Orleans is heading, and you can look and see where the Lakers are heading. And the Lakers they totally dismantled a roster that had Ingram and Julius Randle and Lonzo Ball. And the Pelicans they're one of the hottest teams in the league to me. They're one of the teams with the brightest future. So, if we're talking hot takes there too, I think New Orleans ultimately won that trade.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I've heard a LeBron fan say that the bubble championship shouldn't count or anything like that, because normally you can tell kind of, it's either in support of LeBron, but I appreciate the realism of it, because I mean, you make a good point. If they probably wouldn't have been able to stay healthy, I don't know, if you consider it a championship, then it was always probably going to be that long term New Orleans was going to be in a better spot. But I guess it just depends. Do you count that all or give that all up for a championship? But then they also took that championship roster and dismantled that entire thing, except for LeBron and AD, to bring in Westbrook. So I think they made the trade and then also shot themselves in the foot a couple more times to get to where they are now.
Absolutely. I do think the championship counts. I mean, every team that makes it to the finals, they do get breaks along the way. I mean, Golden State got breaks. The Cavaliers got breaks. The Spurs got breaks. They all got breaks. But, yeah, I think it would be – you're not being real with yourself if you think AD would have made it the full season.
Well, maybe he can finally do that this season. Fingers crossed, maybe kind of, sort of. We'll see because I think if the team's able to stay healthy, I don't know. It's a team that I think at this point, I almost kind of want to see them do well. I think it would be cool to see a team with Pat Bev and Russell Westbrook do really well. But we'll have to see how that goes, because season is 3.5 weeks away, I think, at this point, maybe just 3 weeks. So things are gonna start rolling along, especially with training camp just opening. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Hypothetically Speaking podcast. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen just for this last bit. And thank you everyone for listening. And Zach, thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.